In this tutorial, we're going to be going over the basics of using Adobe Photoshop. And Photoshop is the tool that we'll be using for our raster self-portraits. And the first thing that we're going to do is we'll open up the application, and we're going to be beginning a new project from scratch, so we're going to select Create New right over here. Once I click that, I have some preset options, and I can also enter in numbers for the aspect ratio, the width and height, as well as the resolution of our Photoshop document. And so for different applications, these numbers are going to vary. Whether I want to have something wider than it is tall in landscape orientation, or taller than it is wide in portrait orientation, or right in the middle, square. Additionally, we're going to want to look at our resolution, and that's how many pixels there are in 1 inch. And this doesn't change how many pixels there are in the document, how much information is stored, but it tells us how that document is meant to be displayed. So 72 pixels per inch, or DPI or PPI, dots per inch or points per inch, is a pretty low resolution. It's suitable for online applications. But for us, since we are working on an assignment for MMP 100, we can refer to our assignment information. So we're going to be looking at our, excuse me, our assignments, and we don't have to have any set size for our compositions. I'm going to just start out with my document at 300 DPI or 300 pixels per inch, and I'm just going to then go to an inch unit just to check on how big. I'm gonna make mine large enough to print on a piece of paper. So I'll just say I'm gonna make it 8 inches by 8 inches. I'll make it a square. And so now if I go to pixels, it'll update that number for me. So I'm gonna have a document that's 2400 pixels by 2400 pixels. And RGB color mode is good, and let's go with 16-bit color, so we have a larger variety of colors available to us when we're creating our document. So this looks good. We want to keep our pixel aspect ratio square, and we're going to click Create. So now I have a blank document, and there's a few things that we want to look at before we get started doing things in Photoshop. First, down here we have our layers pane, and you can drag these around and move them. I'm going to close this learning tab, and I ought to put my layer tab right up top here. So layers are how we keep different image assets separate in Photoshop. So every time we import an image or modify something, we want to keep that on a separate layer so that we don't, so that we can keep things organized, keep track of things. And so this is something that's going to be important to us. And additionally, this toolbar over here is something that's going to hold a great number of the tools that we are going to be using for this project. So, because this is a self-portrait project, any images you may have of yourself could be helpful to use here. Additionally, like we discussed, this project can be as abstract as you would like. So you can also build up using collage-like strategies from assets that you can find online. So we're going to go to our Creative Commons search so we can find some images that we are allowed to use. So once that's loaded up, I can go in here, and I'm just going to start out with maybe a pine tree. Why not? I like nature. That looks nice. This is good. Okay. Yeah, so I'll choose this one to start. So I'm going to leave this tab open so that I can make sure to create the creditor, credit the creator of this piece, of this photograph. So I'm going to copy the image now, and I can just paste it with Command V or Control V, and then now I have a new layer that has my image in it. So I'm going to double click on my layer name right here, and I'm going to say Pine tree. So I have that named, and now I can take this, and if I want to make it larger, I can go to Edit, Transform, Scale. What I can also do is I can also press Command T or Control T if I'm on a PC. And so then I can drag the corner, and right now I'm going to press Option, and Option is going to keep my asset in the same central location. It's going to move from the center. So I'll drag that up somewhere like that. And I press Enter to apply the transformation. So this image might not be the easiest to work with, but it's a nice start. So I'm going to move it. I can just click and drag down. I'm just going to move it down there so that I don't see that truck and fence. Okay, so now I have this image here, and I can move it over, and it's gonna snap to the center of the canvas of our document here. That's what that purple line that showed up was. So now that I have created my image, the first thing that I want to do is I want to save this. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save locally, depending on how this is working, whether you're working on a machine that you can store things locally on. So I'm going to save this in my Documents folder. I'm going to say MMP 100 Self-Portrait. All right, and now you can see here in the tab for this document that I've successfully saved as a PSD, Photoshop document file. And so the PSD file, that's our working file that has all of the editable stuff. So, all right, let's see. What do we want to do next? Let's see, so what we want to do next, we're going to look at masking a layer. There's a few things that we can do here. One, I can use one of my selection tools, which are these here. And one tip, if you ever don't know what one of these tools does, just put your mouse over it and hover. And so then it's going to give you a short description of what that tool does. So these ones are our selection tools. And also, if you notice, in the corner of this tool icon, there's a small arrow pointing down and to the right. Anytime you see one of those, that means you can click and hold, and it's going to give you further options. So I'm going to choose an elliptical marquee tool, and I'm just going to select an area in the middle of this tree. And once again, I'm going to press Option, and that's going to make the selection centered around the place where I clicked. And if I press Shift, then it's going to constrain my selection to an equal aspect ratio between height and width. So I'll just select this circle, and you can see the moving lines here. It might be moving a little slowly because my computer is upset about the video being captured. And so now that I have this selection, I'm not going to press Delete. That was me pressing Delete, which is not what we want to do. Because if I press Delete, I have permanently removed those pixels. We want to make sure to set ourselves up so that we can change things in the future with our documents. We don't want to be permanently deleting any information or permanently altering anything. We want to use different layers and different types of adjustment and masking layers to allow for as much variability as possible. So what I'm going to do now that I have this selection, I'm going to go down here to Quick Mask Mode, and clicking this is going to change my selection from being represented by this bounding box, this outline. It's going to use a drawing tool instead of this selection tool. So if I click this, it's going to create this pink overlay over everything that I've not selected. So now, if I have this, I can use different drawing tools to modify my selection. So I'm going to zoom in, and I did that doing by pressing Command+ to zoom in and Command minus to zoom out. And once again, if you're using a PC, that would be Control instead of Command. And so let's say I wanted to soften this selection edge. What I can do is I can go to my filters. I can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and now you can see that that edge has gotten a little bit softer. If I unclick this preview button, we can see it revert back to that very crisp edge. And I can change the radius of the blur to something very blurry, which is going to give me a softer edge of my selection. So that looks okay to me. This is something you're just going to have to play around with to get used to. So be ready to do that. So I'm just going to press OK and go with this. And now that I have this soft selection, I could also use my paintbrush tool to draw in other areas of unselected image. And I'm not going to keep that, but I just want to show you if I go back out of quick mask mode by clicking this button again, you see now that drawing that I made, that little squiggle, is now being represented as a selection. So I'm going to just press Command Z to undo that. And now I think we're good. And so now that I have this selection made, what I can do is I can go over to my Layers panel, and I have a few options here along the bottom. I can throw stuff away, make a new layer. I can make a folder in which I can group my layers. I can make an adjustment layer, and this is what I want. I want to add a layer mask. So instead of deleting any data from our image, we're going to make a mask. So I can click that, and now I have removed everything except for that circle. But wait, maybe that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the inverse operation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to once again undo with Command Z. And now I'm going to go to the Select menu. I'm going to select Inverse. So now this is going to inverse my selection. So everything that was selected after I click this button will be unselected, and everything that was unselected after I click this button will be selected. So I click that, and now the thing is, it looks very, very similar, right? The only thing that we can see now is that we have this selection bounding box along the entire outer edge of our image. So now when I click Create Layer Mask, or Add Layer Mask, now it's going to remove a piece from this image. And so now, let's see, I'm going to find a photo of myself. I'm going to use this photo, and I'm going to put my face into this tree, we'll say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Place, Embedded. I'm going to navigate to my image, and now it's going to place that image there. And so you might notice that, well, first I have to press Enter to actually place it there. And now you might notice that our tree is gone. So that's because of our layer order. We're going to see whatever's on the top layers, and that'll obscure whatever's behind it. So I'm going to drag this down below the pine tree, and now you can see that there's, oh, come on. You can see that I need to move, go to my Move tool to be able to move myself to be behind that tree. So what I'm going to do also is I'm going to click Command T to transform this image, and I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And let's just see. Yeah, that will do well enough for now. Okay, and I'm going to press Enter to apply that transformation. And so now, we're doing pretty well. What I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this eyeball, and this eyeball is going to toggle visibility of a layer. And I'm going to actually turn off the tree layer for a moment, because what I want to do is I want to make another mask that's going to get rid of any of this excess information in this photo that's spilling over past my tree. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'm going to select my face. Option, remember, is going to, oh, Option is going to let me select from the center. So I'm just going to get rid of everything that's not directly near my face. So now I can push layer mask, add layer, add my vector mask here. And now when I bring my tree layer back, now it's not spilling over at all. And so now maybe what I can do is I can change my image size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my rectangular tool, and I'm going to just select what is actually has image in it. So I'm going to select that, and now I can go to I can go to image, crop. And so this is going to change the size of my actual document. And mind you, this is not a very good self-portrait. Your self-portrait should take quite a lot longer than this, but I don't want to put you through all of that. Okay, but now what I can do is I can I can go to my selection tool, my marquee tool, and click elsewhere, and now that'll void out my previous selection. And now what I want to do is I want to make my face match this tree a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my layer. You can see that this layer is selected by it being highlighted. And now what I want to do is I want to go here to this black and white cookie looking icon. And that is our adjustment layer button. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to change it to, well, first I'm going to go to my levels. Levels is a very helpful tool for changing contrast and brightness with a little bit more control than using a the brightness and contrast tool. So I can change the level of what will be displayed as pure black image, and then this is what's going to cut off the threshold for what is displayed as pure white. So if I drag those closer together, that increases my contrast. That doesn't look good though. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just go back to how it was. And I'm just going to bring that up a little bit so we actually have some full black. And I'm actually bring this, I'm going to leave that where it is actually. And I can change my mid-range. I'm going to make it a little bit less intense. So there, that looks okay to me. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do another one. Now I want to do a color adjustment layer. So I'm going to go to color balance. And so now you can see that I have two different masks here, two different layers to adjust my color. And so what I'm going to do, I want to make my face a little greener so I can line up with the tree a little bit better. So I'm going to add some green into the midtones and a little bit of blue, a little bit of cyan, and maybe a little bit of yellow. There, I don't want to go too crazy with it. I'm going to go now to the shadows. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to maybe see about this, a little bit more green. Yeah. And we'll go to the highlights now. Green up the highlights. I think I want more yellow in here. Okay, that's a good enough start. We'll just see what's going on with that. And so now I think I want to change those levels again, maybe. I think what I want to do, I want to actually just make everything a little darker. Yeah, that'll do for now. And so now, this isn't the perfect color match. I probably would spend some more time. I'm going to make another one. Let's go to hue and saturation. And this will let me move the color around a little bit. So I'm going to say that maybe I want to be a little bit more there. I'll desaturate a little bit maybe. I'll just go with that for now. Yeah, and like I said, this is not a very good self-portrait, but we're getting somewhere. All right. So now let's look at adding in another image. So let's try going back to our Creative Commons search, and I'm going to keep this tab open so I can cite it later. And I'm going to go to, I'm just going to right-click this and open link in a new tab, and that's just going to get me to another tab of the Creative Commons search. And I'm going to search for, let's say, a bumblebee. And I'm not looking for the transformer, I'm looking for a bumblebee. And this one looks pretty good to me. This, because I have a nice solid background, this is going to make this much easier to use. So I'm going to copy this image again. I'm going to go back to my Photoshop document, and I'll just, oops, I didn't want to click that. That was a mistake. And I'm going to paste that. And so now I have this bumblebee, and the thing is, because it's behind this layer mask, it's going to be cut out just the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move this just by dragging it up to the top layer. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus. And now what I want to do is I want to remove everything that is not the bumblebee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this tool here, the lasso tool. I'm going to go to the magnetic lasso tool. This isn't going to be perfect because I'm doing it fast. If I wanted to really get in to some intense detail, I'd go and like try to get in all of this little fuzz. But I'm just going to go quickly. The magnetic lasso tool will find areas of difference. It like does an edge detection thing. So I'm going to just go quickly with this and not worry too much about it. If I was doing this for my assignment, I would spend more time on this, but for a demonstration of the tool, this will work. And so it's going to automatically generate these points. If I know that I want to point somewhere, I can click, and then it's going to create a point in my selection there. You can see all of those control points around. And so now, that's okay. It's not perfect, but it's not the worst. If I want to clean it up a little bit, I can go into Quick Mask mode, and I can see that I missed some parts here, so I can select my brush and fill in my selection a little bit. And so yeah, if I notice stuff, oop, that was a little bit extreme there. I can clean it up, I can zoom in and get even better eyes on what's going on. Oops. But I think that that will do well enough for now. Okay. And if I press Command 0, that's going to zoom me to see the entire document. So now that I have that selected, I have my layer selected, I'm going to press my layer mask button again. Oops. I need to exit Quick Mask mode first. And then I'll press my Add Layer Mask. And so now I have this bumblebee. And I can make it fly around. And I'm just going to make it sitting on top of my head. Why not? So now we might notice something, which is, I mean, it's not the cleanest, but once again, that's something to do with time, how much time we have. But because we were on a black background when we had this bumblebee, its wings look really weird, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually take those wings and we're going to work just with them. Drag here onto this plus sign, and now I'm going to make a duplicate layer. And so now that I have this duplicate layer, what I can do is I can double-click on the mask, and then it's going to show me what my selection is roughly by graying out the area behind. And so what I want to do is now I want to select just those wings. Or rather, we can think of it as deselecting the rest of the bee. So right now I have this lasso tool that if you look carefully, you can see that there's a little plus sign next to it. That means that anything I select is going to add to the selection of my layer mask. What I want to do is I want to remove area from my selection. So I'm going to press the Option button, and you see while I'm holding the Option button down, there's now a minus sign. And so now what I can do is I can draw around this entire bee, leaving the wings unselected. And now when I press OK, oh, there's my. You see that I have a layer that's just those wings. And so now I'll be able to modify those a bit more. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my other layer. I'm going to do the same thing, except for I'm going to remove the wings. So Option, and I'm going to select those wings. Oop, that was a little bit sloppy right there. So I'm going to do it in more than one pass. You can always do it in more than one pass. Select those. Select my wing there. And now if I press OK, I should have a separate bee from my wings. And so now I can edit these wings. So I'm going to select that layer. So right here, there's this opacity option, which is at 100%, which means it's completely opaque. And now we can bring that down a bit. So that looks a little bit better. I might want to change my contrast. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try inverting the wings. That's a little bit better. I don't really care for it though. So I'm going to undo that. Command Z, undo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that adjustment layer. I'm going to change my levels maybe. I'm going to bring, ooh my. So right now, if you notice, that changed everything in all of my image. If I don't want that to happen, if I want this levels adjustment layer to only associate with one part of my image, then I need to click this icon here. And this is going to change it so it's only going to affect the layer directly below it. So I can click that, and now I'm just dealing with my bumblebee, or rather just the wings of my bumblebee. Yeah, I'm liking that a little bit more. Okay, and so there, now I can see a bit through my wings. I'm going to change my opacity down a little bit. Oh, sorry, I'm changing the opacity of my adjustment layer, which is not what I want to do. I want to change the opacity of those wings a bit. So let's just try something else. And so now, I might want to do a little bit more work on those wings. They seem a little bit too light. So I'll move them there. That seems good to me. I can see through it. I got this bumblebee sitting on my head, and now I could do something like go to my brush tool, make sure I have white selected, and I'm going to give the bumblebee a little thought. And so I've made a mistake here. I'm editing this image layer. So what I want to actually do, I want to make sure to create a new layer. So I'm going to click plus, and then I have a new layer. I'm going to drag it up to the very top, and I'm going to double click on that. And I'm going to say thought bubble. And I should really go through and name all of these layers, but I'm going to not do that at the moment. Okay, so now that I have this new layer, if I select that, now I'm not going to be destroying any information from my other image. So I can draw in a little speech bubble, we'll say. And so right now my brush size of my paintbrush is 13 pixels. So I can make that larger if I want to do some filling in. And so then I could, in addition, go down to my text tool and write something in text, blah, blah, blah. But I actually want to just do it by hand. So I'm going to go back to my brush. And now this double-sided arrow thing, that's going to toggle between these two selected colors. So I'll click that, make my brush small again. I'll say so this bumblebee is just going to be asking, where am And so I'll accompany this video with a PDF document that goes over much more of what happens in Photoshop. So please take a moment to review that before our next class, and let me know if there's any questions. But for the assignment, the bare minimum is that you're going to need to have adjustment layers and mask layers, at least one of each in your compositions. So have fun, play around, and also remember, like I said, if you hover over things, you can see it says spot healing brush. Google that if you have a question of how it works. There's plenty of resources online for all of this information. All right, see you in class later. Bye-bye.